It was an ordinary day when we stumbled upon a sight that would stay with us forever. We were walking down an old street when something caught our attention, a faint mewing sound coming from the ground. It was weak, desperate, and barely audible. But it was there. Our hearts sank as we followed the sound. And then we saw it, a small, trembling kitten trapped inside a rusty outdoor drainage pipe. The poor thing had clearly been there for days, its body was covered in dirt and blood. And it was too weak to move. Too weak to escape. The pipe was narrow and rigid. And the kitten was wedged deep inside. We tried calling out. But there was no sign of its mother. No one around to help. The kitten was all alone. And the situation was dire. With every passing minute, it was becoming more and more apparent that we had to act fast if we wanted to save this fragile life. Time was not on our side. We knelt beside the pipe, trying to figure out the best way to get the kitten out. Our first instinct was to reach in and pull it out gently. But no matter how much we tugged, it wouldn't budge. The kitten's little body was stuck. Its legs pinned in such a way that even the slightest pull caused it to whimper in pain. Our hearts broke with every sound it made. We had no choice but to take more drastic action. We quickly realized that the only way to free the kitten was to cut open the pipe. But how? We didn't have much, just a small hand saw and some pliers. It wasn't ideal. But we knew we had no other option. Slowly, carefully, we began to saw through the hard, brittle material of the pipe. Each stroke felt like it took forever. And each time the saw cut into the metal, we worried that we might accidentally hurt the kitten. But we kept going, determined to get it out, to give it a fighting chance. The sound of the saw cutting through the pipe echoed through the air, making the urgency of the situation all the more real. It was painstaking work. The metal was stubborn, and we had to be delicate. After a while, the first section of the pipe came off. We moved on to the next, working together to free the kitten as quickly as we could without causing further harm. It felt like we were racing against time. But we couldn't afford to rush. We had to be careful. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, we managed to cut the last section of the pipe. Gently, we reached inside and pulled the kitten out. It was so small. Its fur matted and sticky with blood. Its little body trembling. For a moment, we just looked at each other, not knowing if the kitten would survive. It was so weak. And we feared the worst. But we didn't give up. We wrapped the kitten in a soft cloth and rushed to the car. Every second counted. As we sped to the emergency care clinic, we prayed that we hadn't been too late. The journey felt like a blur. But when we finally arrived, we rushed the kitten inside, where a team of vets immediately went to work. The first thing they did was clean the kitten. The wounds were deep, but they weren't fatal. Slowly, the vet began washing away the blood and dirt that covered the poor creature. It was a delicate process, and we couldn't help but feel a little relieved as the kitten's body was revealed to be in better condition than we'd feared. It was weak, but it wasn't beyond saving. Once the kitten had been cleaned and given some fluids, we moved to the next step, getting it some food. The little creature was so malnourished, so exhausted. But when we offered it a small bowl of warm milk, something amazing happened. It drank. Slowly at first, but with more determination as it realized that there was hope. It was a small act, but it was a sign that the kitten wasn't ready to give up. Days passed, and we continued to care for the kitten. watching as it slowly began to recover. From barely moving and struggling to survive, the little fighter started to show signs of life. Its eyes became brighter, its movements more confident. Every day was a small victory. The once helpless kitten, weak and covered in blood, had turned into a playful, curious ball of fur. It started exploring its surroundings, climbing up on things, and showing the kind of energy we hadn't seen since we first rescued it. There were moments when we thought we might lose it. But those moments passed, and the kitten grew stronger. It was like watching a miracle unfold before our eyes, a life that almost slipped away, brought back by care, love, and a little bit of hope. Eventually, the day came when the kitten was well enough to leave the clinic. It was no longer the fragile, weak creature we had rescued from the pipe. It was now a healthy, happy kitten, ready to start its new life. And while the kitten was no longer in danger, we couldn't help but think about how close we had come to losing it. How many animals out there are in desperate need of a second chance? How many are suffering in silence, waiting for someone to notice? We were lucky. This kitten had a second chance. But there are so many others who aren't as fortunate. The experience was a reminder of how precious life is and how important it is to help those who can't help themselves.